the very first thing I'd like to do is to ask everyone that's online right now to please mute your audio so that you can follow the new world that we live in, the world of video conferencing etiquette. So if you could please take a moment and mute your video so that we can, mute your audio so that we can all enjoy the conference presentations as they come together. My name is Jeff Edwards. I'm with the Utah Advanced Materials and Manufacturing Initiative. Been very pleased to be involved with the AMCC group for over 3 years now, and had a great experiences working with that. And we're very pleased to be able to offer today, I think, what will be a really interesting presentation, series of presentations about how the manufacturing industry in the U.S. is responding to the COVID-19 crisis. And we're very happy to do that. We've got 4 speakers lined up for today. We're going to ask each of them to take about 10 minutes. I'll give each of them a 1-minute warning when it's time to end their conversations, and then we'll do that, and we'll ask each of our speakers to introduce themselves as they come along. But first of all, I'm going to switch over to sharing some slides. We've got our executive director, Matt Bogosian, is going to give us a welcome. So Matt, we'll give you the floor here, and please offer your welcome to the group.
Great, thank you, Jeff, and good morning, everyone. My name is Matt Bogosian. I'm the executive director of something called the American Manufacturing Communities Collaborative. For those, most of you probably know, it's a collaborative of federally designated communities from the IMCP program, the Investing in Manufacturing program that started about 5 years ago. And these 24 regions have been collaborating for all of those years, working to develop best practices around sustainable economic development in their regions, and really have become a force to share best practices and to give decision makers, both locally, statewide, and nationally, a sense of what's happening on the ground. This network gets together once a week on the phone. It's amazing, and it's really led by the communities themselves. Some of the presenters that you'll hear from today are the leaders of our collaborative, and these half-hour conversations every week lead to all kinds of independent exchanges of information across the country. This webinar, this impromptu snapshot webinar, is put together as a result of this collaboration, one to extend the conversation or in this really critical crisis time around PPE, what's happening on the ground. So we're very lucky to have the kind of leadership coming from the communities. My hat's off to our Utah delegation for putting this, hosting it in terms of the platform, and Jeff Edwards moderating it. We have lots of partners. The Center for Regional Economic Competitiveness has been partners in putting this together. So thanks to Ken Poole and Mark Tropey there. AMCC has partners too. The Northeast Midwest Institute and the Century Foundation have been really key partners in helping this collaborative of manufacturing communities do the work that they do. So that's a snapshot of why we're here, who the partners are, and we just say thanks. And we hope this adds value, and please let us know how we can improve this kind of thing. So with that, Jeff, let me turn it back to you.
Okay, I apologize for losing our slides. I've lost my controls. Linda, can you help me find my controls? I've lost all of my mute and unmute, and my participants. All that whole box has gone away. All I have left is this.
You're pretty faint.
Well,
I don't know whether that's...
Jeff, could everybody speak, please, this thing or whatever? Jeff, once you go into presentation mode, you lose all the chat and all that side screen. You can't have both.
Okay, but I don't have any controls at all right now. I don't have any way to switch into sharing screen mode or anything. So
the only thing I can suggest is to go out and come back in.
Okay, I apologize for that, folks.
So Matt, can you
Yeah,
say a few
sure.
more?
I'll carry on. Yeah, it's a
Or do,
perfect scenario.
or do we want
Um,
our to talk?
no, this is fine. I'll talk a little bit about you know, AMCC and the member communities around the country, you know, have been um, looking at kind of two sets of activities in this coronavirus situation. One is, of course, how the manufacturing sector, you know, can stay on its feet to continue the work. Manufacturing being at the forefront of the American economy, it's critical that it get through this crisis with its supply chains intact. So that's one aspect. The other aspect is the other bucket of activity is how can the manufacturing sector do more to help respond to the deficiencies that we've realized in the PPE and other equipment necessary. And so that's really the subject matter of this particular webinar and our conversation here. But it's both buckets are important, right? We have, you know, about 300,000 manufacturers across the United States, and they are at the forefront of our economy. And we have a lot of issues right now with them, and we're going to continue to have those issues. And we need to bolster those companies and the employees that work for them, and as we go forward. So this is a part of that effort, and hopefully we have Jeff coming on here pretty soon. Andy, I see Andy Stettner is on here, one of the AMCC partners. You want to give a nutshell about the Century Foundation's role in this?
Yeah, so this is Andy Stettner with the Century Foundation. You know, for folks not familiar with AMCC, we've transitioned a very effective pilot program, the Investing in Manufacturing Communities Partnership, into now a federally funded program, against manufacturing community support program. But why we've been so excited about this is we believe manufacturing is critical to creating good jobs in America and our national competitiveness. And the way to rebuild it is to start from the community level on up. And that's what the federal government should be looking for. And I think in this crisis, we've seen the state partners in the network more for manufacturing extension partnership have really rallied to the challenges facing U.S. manufacturing. You know, here we're so really excited to hear about effort on this call, whether it's creating PPE and really
Is everyone having problems with the audio here?
Yeah, Andy, we're having a little trouble with go ahead.
Yeah,
It's very hard to
Andy,
understand
you
what's
are.
going on.
Yeah, and Andy, this is Sarah Lee. I'm going to jump in real quickly here because
okay, I'll stop there.
Doing is but the Century Foundation has been fantastic. So has the Northeast Midwest Institute and all of our federal agency BFFs. We wouldn't be able to do anything without them. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start with Washington State's presentation while Jeff gets his. Not that I would ever say that you have to get your act together in any way, shape, or form there, because that's part of my fun.
What's happened is we had a max of 75 in the meeting, and when he went out, he can't get back in. I'm getting a lot of messages. I can't get in the meeting call. Next time we're gonna instead of using a meeting platform, we'll use a webinar platform. So I apologize, but yes, if each presenter could share their screen and do their presentation, that would be very helpful.
Okay, just a second, and I'm going to do that. And hold on here. We're going to start, and I think it probably would be a good idea for us, all of us who are on video, to go off video, if we can. And let's see. And then I'm going to ask in a second here whether you can see my screen. All right, Matt, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen. Yes.
Okay. Yes, looks good.
Here we go. My name is Sarah Lee, and I am the Governor's Advanced Manufacturing Sector Lead for Washington State. And with me is Deloitte Wolf, who is President of Impact Washington, who is our NIST MEP. And we know what we're talking about. We're talking about retooling during a pandemic. Okay, and we'll see if we can actually. Oh, I love this. I love this. Now I can't. Let me just see if I can get to the next slide. And this is part of the fun with all this. Okay, just a minute. This is Annika. Why won't it switch?
I'm not sure. Sorry.
Maybe the bandwidth. Okay, just a moment here.
Unless you're presenting, would you turn off the video? Maybe that'll help.
Okay, everybody turn off the video and we'll start. Okay. We want to tell you something. We want to tell you something. Being first is not always good. Just a little bit north of where Deloitte Wolf lives, a guy returned from Wuhan, China, in January. And you can see what happened since then. We've reached 541 deaths in Washington State. Now I'm trying to churn the trying to change. Sorry guys, I think what's going to be slow about this is trying to move from screen to screen. Oh, here we go. Okay, the good news is the stay home, stay healthy works.
Yeah.
Our curve is going down. But what do? How do we respond to getting... Okay, everybody get on mute if you're not talking, please.
Okay. So I mean, that's where I'm just so appreciative, because that's my hope, because I did bring up some of the different groups that I've worked with.
Andy, I think that you can put
groups that I've been learning about. Like Jay Raul from Hire 360, and they seem to have, a broad, inclusive message, but their program is so young, like
I'm
very
just going to try to talk
new,
using my broadcast voice to get over the person
and again,
who is.
I got rid of her.
Can you try to?
I got rid of her. I put her on mute.
Thank you so much. Okay. Let's start over again here. Okay, one of the things that we knew that we had to do is we had to PPE. PPE is something none of us probably knew much about until recently. We decided that we would do 3 distinct and separate channels. One that would be purchase, the traditional purchase, one would be donation, and one would be retooling. So let me tell you first a little bit about the purchase one, and we'll get to that. I'm sure it'll get to that slide in just a moment because it's just playing with me. What we did is we were really lucky in that we brought in some experts on all parts of this. Boy, I wish I could change my PowerPoint slide. This is the bane of my existence now.
All of us.
Yeah. Okay, let's visualize a slide that just has the let's just a minute here. Let's visualize a slide that just has the shopping bag on it. And what we were able to do is, for the procurement slide, for the procurement channel, for the purchase channel, we got a full-time loan executive from Microsoft with 3 backups for them. We also got loan executives from Amazon for our distribution, Boeing, and Kaiser Permanente. They've been doing a fantastic job. For the donation piece, what we've been doing is we've been talking with folks and either doing warm handoffs, like when they say, hey, I got 20,000 N95 masks, and sending them to the procurement folks. Or we've been really lucky that Vulcan and Amazon and Microsoft have donated some as well. But we're here really to talk about retooling. Retooling is, oh, look at this, now it's working. Retooling was, we were really, really lucky because we are very, very close with our manufacturing extension partnership that's part of the NIST MEP. And they gave us 3 full-time loaned executives, and they are our retooling czar. And Deloitte, why don't you start from there, start from here, and just tell me when to change the slide.
Go ahead, Sarah Lee. Go to the next slide.
Okay. Done.
So one of the things that we wanted to do and work along with the state was, what was the ask from the state of Washington? And the governor asked manufacturers to possibly be able to retool. 500 manufacturers responded immediately and flooded our website. So we decided that Impact Washington, being the manufacturing triage expert in the state, we've had to come up with a process to vet those manufacturers. So go ahead, Sarah Lee. And I'm going to talk about three groups that we ended up vetting, just to highlight them. One of them is called Outdoor Research, and Outdoor Research is a company that does a lot of outdoor climbing materials, and they also have contracts. But they decided, after convening with Impact Washington, the state of Washington, how do we convert our facility in tactical gloves to tactical vests to building masks, because we all know that the N95 mask was a high need in our state. So they were able to retool an entire floor, repurpose some machinery, and able to now build 200,000 masks per day to meet our demand in the state of Washington. So that's just an example of one of the projects that we did in the state. And they asked for no additional funding other than for us to come in and do some consulting.
Deloitte.
The other thing was hand sanitizer. As everybody knows, there was a shortage of hand sanitizer. The state of Washington has 489 distilleries, and they have the highest per capita distilleries in the country. So we worked with the Washington Distillery Proclamation from our governor, and we're able to produce roughly 450 SKUs delivered to hospitals and other supply chain needs in the marketplace. One of the big challenges for us, though, is plastic bottles. We work with Berry Plastics, a supplier, and we were able to deliver that product last week. So 2 big shout outs to Heritage Brewery Distillery. They have really good whiskey, by the way, if you need any, and you can order the sample of this. So that's an example of how the MEP, the state, and manufacturing convene together to retool in the supply chain. The other big one, go ahead. The other big area of need was face shields. So we needed to figure out how to come up with face shields quickly. Most face shields are a lowest cost item. They're very, very important, and most of those are developed offshore. We worked with 40 experts. We've spent 4 days, and we came up with a design that was approved not only by FDA, but NIA approved. And we vetted out all the manufacturers, and now, as a result of this, we have convened several manufacturers, 2 big aerospace companies. One's Global Plastics, and another one's Tool Gauge, who are not tier 1 suppliers of Boeing, and they're now producing 40,000 face masks per week. And we were able to procure that in a matter of 4 days, and part of it was injection molding, and part of it was just 3D printing. The injection molding piece, we hurried up and repurposed injection molding with aluminum that has lifespan, and we're now finishing up the machinery on hard steel, and they will probably be a long-term provider of face shields, not only on a local basis, but national basis. So once again, we were to put people back to work, be able to supply the state, and be able to supply the country. The last thing was back to work on
Deloitte,
Yeah.
the one thing that's really cool about this is the face shield part. That's actually an Avery notebook divider with 3-hole punch already there. So they designed it so it would automatically accept the 3-hole punch from the notebook, the Avery notebook plastic divider.
Yes. One of the things I should mention to the whole group on the phone is our manufacturers were very creative for the time when we were doing, when they found out that the face shields material was not readily available, but somebody went to Staples and found out that Staples and Amazon had a mass amount of this Avery that you put on your notebooks. So they were very creative and worked around this, and it was approved. So in the short term, until we built the supply chain on that. Thanks for bringing that up, Sarah. Then go ahead, Sarah.
Yep.
Next page.
Done.
Yes. So now we're really like, what is really back to work look like? And so we're now surveying our companies and associations and really determining what our post world's going to look like. We're working with Commerce. We're working with a lot of agencies like Association, Washington Business, and really deciding what we need to do long term, how we get back to work, and how do we make our manufacturers safe on the shop floor. As we all know, Boeing is coming back online. They're going to bring back 2,500, but they have 70,000 people. So how do you make them safe on the plane? One of the things we're lucky is an MEP center. We've got some additional funding from NIST MEP during the stimulus bill in our state. We're going to be able to provide consulting at no cost to manufacturers. We are awarded a $1.3 million fund. So I encourage everybody to work with the local MEPs because they all have additional funds that are really geared around back to work and repurposing the marketplace. So go ahead, Sarah.
Okay, lessons learned. One of the things that we're just going to go, I'll say one and then Deloitte will say one. You know what? We're ready for earthquakes here, and Salt Lake City also is actually from today's 4.2 earthquake. But we are not ready for pandemics. We were not ready. Our supply chain was not ready. Deloitte?
Right. Good comment. The other one is facts, and we learned that we need to really live by the facts and not live by fear. And we learned a lot of that by vetting out our PPE.
The other piece is we need to make sure that our pipeline works. And one of the things that we didn't do early on was make sure our internal regulators were ready to receive new and unusual things like distilleries making hand sanitizer or maker spaces making face shields. Deloitte?
And we all got together and agreed on a process, and we approved it. Improved on it every day. And one of the things that our center, we always say continuous improvement. So how do we tweak it? But we also want to live outside of it. So we don't want to live outside, we want to stay inside the guardrails, because once we go outside the guardrails, then we expose ourselves to failure.
Why don't you do the next one, Deloitte?
One of the things also we realized supply chain is we as an organization have become way too dependent on foreign suppliers. In the state of Washington, we're really, really good at building airplane parts. We're not really, really good at full supply chain needs. So it's a key learning for us, and we're really doing a deep dive on that.
And I'd like to end with going with the experts. We got Microsoft, Amazon, Boeing, all these people who offered to help us. But I have to tell you, thanks to AMCC and before that IMCP, and thanks a shout out to EDA and NIST MEP, we went with Impact Washington, and we would have been up a creek without them. So I want to give them a big hand. Thank you very much. And now I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
Thank you, Sarah. Oh, am I muted? Yeah. Yeah.
Nope,
Thank
I can
you,
hear you.
Sarah.
Oh, you're good.
That was an excellent presentation. We do have some questions, but we'll come back to them. And I'm sorry, I don't have Who is the next presenter? Jeff?
That should be Kansas.
Kansas, are you ready to go? Can you share your screen? Oh, I'm
Debbie,
sorry.
I think you're on mute.
Let me just get. What did you say, Jeff?
Hi, this is Debbie. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, we got Wichita State. Okay.
Okay, is the screen up?
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Okay, am I in presentation mode or just?
You're not. You're just in. You're not in presentation mode.
I am now?
Yes, you are.
Okay. Hello, my name is Debbie Franklin, and I work with Wichita State University. Our person who is in charge of this particular initiative is Rob Gerlach, and Rob is the university's IP director of IP, intellectual property, and he is coordinating the response in the Wichita area. Wichita is in Kansas. We're sort of bullseye right in the middle of the state, have a strong legacy of manufacturing, just like our good friends over in the state of Washington. The response we have branded or have given it a title of the Coalition of Groups of Folks Who Are Involved as Ad Astra. And it's a temporary, yes?
Debbie, I just hopped on if you want me to pick up. I just got off my other call.
Okay, very good. I will advance slides for you.
Perfect.
I'm going on mute.
Okay, thank you. So my name is Rob Gerlach, like Debbie was saying, and I am the Director of Intellectual Property and Technology Transfer at Wichita State University. And I've been working with a number of the leaders at the university to try to find the best way that we can provide a response to this coronavirus crisis. So I've been working with individuals like Debbie as well as President Golden to try to really figure this out for us. And what ended up happening is we started working on a number of projects. We reached out to our friends over in the aviation manufacturing industry. First, we started with Textron Aviation. We got a communication going with them. And what we quickly learned is that a number of local hospitals were reaching out to all of these different companies and trying to get assistance with PPE. So we were able to call them all up, get them all on a call with Spirit Aerosystems, Airbus, and Textron Aviation. In about 2 to 2.5 days, we were able to form this coalition and formally announce it. And the coalition is really important for us because it's what enables us to move very effectively and very quickly among the local area. So we're actually coordinating projects across the different companies. Next slide. And so what really brought us into this was we were seeing PPE shortages in Kansas as we are across the entire United States. And Wichita State University, being a large part of the Wichita community, we wanted to know how we could help. We started out by acting as a PPE collection site where local individuals and companies could drop off PPE. We were able to donate thousands of N95 masks locally. We were able to donate all kinds of gowns and coveralls and gloves. But once we kind of had that initial surge of people dropping off donations at Wichita State University, it quickly became apparent to us that we weren't going to have enough PPE to be able to distribute locally here. So we started looking at these other ways of how we could actually create the PPE. Next slide. So how does the Ad Astra Coalition work? It's really pretty simple. What we do is we first identify a type of PPE that's needed that we think we can create an initial design for. And how we get that identification is by working directly with our local medical community. We have been on nonstop calls with the hospitals and the local medical providers and first responders, figuring out what their inventory is, what their stock is, where they're getting depleted, how we can help, and how we can help quickly and efficiently. Step 2 is we create this initial prototype using rapid prototyping. At Wichita State University, we have NIAR, the National Institute for Aviation Research. So we have a lot of rapid prototyping capabilities that come from NIAR. A lot of the companies we're working with Textron Aviation, Airbus, and Spirit Aerosystems also have this rapid prototyping capability. So we get an initial design done, an initial prototype, and then step 3 is we distribute it. We want to make sure that the Ad Astra Coalition is only creating PPE that can immediately be used by the local medical community and really South Central Kansas and beyond to the extent. But we're not wanting to create PPE that doesn't meet a particular need. And a great example is this. One thing we focused on initially was face shields. We had a number of face shield designs, and ultimately we went through 6 iterations in less than 2 weeks. Each iteration was approved by the local medical community. However, each iteration got a little bit better as we continued to learn more coronavirus and about anything issues with the face shields. We were able to modify the design, keep the production rolling, and keep moving forward. And then that step 4 is how do we optimize and really be able to create this and move it forward so that we can have a sufficient PPE to meet demand. 3D printing is fantastic. Additive manufacturing is great. We can get a prototype overnight. Additive manufacturing is not great for large scale production. So that's one of the first things that we've tried to tackle. Next slide. So the capabilities of the coalition, with these being large aviation manufacturers, building our nacelles on our planes, our wings, our fuselages, you got your Cessna Citations going. So they have just an immense amount of manufacturing capability that we were able to tap into locally. One of our favorite tricks that we've been using right now is the Zoom cutter. The Zoom cutter is able to work through a 7mm film that we're using for face shields very quickly. To give an idea of how we're able to leverage this, we got raw material from a partner of ours from Wichita State University who's actually in Spencer, Massachusetts, FlexCon. They provided us some rolls of raw material. We are able to get about a 97% efficiency out of those. So the Zoom cutter can nest the things together very nicely and cut out, so we're not having very much waste at all. We're getting the maximum amount of PPE as we can out of that film. We've also obviously got the design skills at Wichita State University and NIAR. We have Gerber cutters, water jets. We got the additive manufacturing. We're also looking at how our autoclaves that we typically are using, again, for wings, how we can use those potentially in the current situation to respond to the PPE issues. Next slide. So one of the first projects that we really got started on was this face shield project. And we were able to use this 7mm optical film that we sourced out of Spencer, Massachusetts. And we have, like I said, about 5 or 6 different iterations. And 2 of the ones that have led the way are shown on the screen right now. On the left side of the screen, we have a medical practitioner here locally who is using our version that was created just out of 7mm film. We were able to create that for approximately 60 cents just in raw material costs, including the elastic. So the shield itself is very cheap. On the right side, and it's also very quickly to make. On the right side, we have the 3D printed that we've been doing. So this is a frame version where the film is cut in a certain way where then it can attach to the frame. Same film, but it also now has a frame to go with it. Next slide. So we're in the process now of tooling up. To date, we've delivered a little over 1,000 of these various face shields locally here. Within the next 2 weeks, we will have delivered over 20,000 locally here. And that's because Spirit Aerosystems recognized right away, if we want to mass produce this, we can't rely on just producing. We've got to get a tool built. So we've actually tooled up. We're injection molding the frame component now. The medical community definitely liked the frame component version best. They also saw the ability to potentially, since it's injection molded, they could take off the frame and potentially take off the shield, potentially sterilize the frame and put a new shield on. So they also like that possibility if we see a resurgence of this in the coming months after it kind of dies down here. After tooling up, we're going to be looking around, without labor cost, around $3 a shield. We can make approximately 1,000 shields a day. The number I was actually given is 3,000 shields a day. We kind of tampered that down because we don't want to overpromise, underdeliver. But without the frame component, costs are, this here says $1.50, but I know the costs are actually a little lower than that, also giving us a little bit of a buffer there. So in the next coming days and weeks, we'll be producing around 20, 30 to 40,000 of these. We're keeping in touch with our local community in South Central Kansas to make sure that's what's needed. And we're trying to establish connections across the nation. If there's anybody else who has a need with face shields, that's something that we think we can help solve. Next slide.
Stethoscope is next.
Okay. So the next slide is we're working on a 3D disposable stethoscope project. Perfect. what we were hearing from the local medical community is they want to have a stethoscope. They can go into a room, have a COVID-19 positive patient potentially, use a stethoscope, and then leave that stethoscope in the room. That way, we're not transporting that stethoscope and potentially the coronavirus with it. We are finalizing this design. We're finalizing and optimizing the design portion of the stethoscope itself. We are very, very close. Our goal is in the next couple of weeks to be able to deliver around, we have a current ask of a little over 2,000 of these disposable stethoscopes. What we did is we took an open source design. We continued to modify on that open source design because we noticed a number of issues that we could potentially smooth out to help us increase output. If we get a much higher demand than where we're at now, we're going to look for tooling up for this as well. So tooling up for injection molding is always going to enable us to achieve our highest capacity, but we don't want to do that unless it's actually needed here locally. Right now, estimates are around $4 per disposable stethoscope. Next slide. Intubation box shields have been a huge one that we've started getting asked for. They're actually not even asking for it just for intubation purposes. They're asking for so when the EMS transports somebody from location A to location B who might be COVID-19 positive, they want to be able to put this plexiglass shield around their head. There's nothing really sexy to it. It's just a cover that has the acrylic glass all around it to prevent any aerosol spray. You see the holes that are cut out to enable you to stick your hands in the holes and intubate somebody if necessary. We did have an FDA concern that one of our members of the coalition raised for this. The question was, does this qualify as PPE and under the general guidelines that the FDA has provided? So underneath that, we actually reached out to one of the law firms here who said, we don't have any clear guidance from the FDA. Here's what we recommend. We recommend that you email the FDA, and they gave us a particular email address. I think it was COVID-19 manufacturing or something to that effect. And so I emailed them, and literally within 24 hours, they were able to get a response to me, which shows how quickly, FDA and all the other administrations are really working hard to be able to address these issues and be nimble as all of us are. They got back to me in under 24 hours, and they said intubation box shields would fall underneath the PPE guidance that they are giving, and that they did not plan, if somebody is making or manufacturing intubation box shields for local medical community that needs it, they do not plan on bringing any FDA enforcement action against that company. So obviously we've been attacking the waiver liability by having anybody who takes our PPE sign a waiver, but then we've also been working on the regulatory compliance as well. Next slide. And I know I'm running out of time here, so I'm going to really quickly run through this. Surgical face masks are another thing we're looking at. We've got a lot of fabric that we think we might be able to use as a surgical face mask. It's not an N95 replacement. That would be the holy grail, I think, right now. We have not found an N95 replacement yet, although we are looking at a few methods of sterilizing them using the autoclaves. Next slide. One big caveat that I always throw out there is these are not FDA approved, CDC approved, NIOSH approved. These are meant to help the local medical community during the crisis and help get over this issue. We're just really looking for our supply chains to be able to catch up. We're also looking to kind of capture on some of the innovation that we're doing. So if any of the manufacturers of this equipment, of normal manufacturers of PPE equipment, are interested in the new designs we come up with, we can definitely have conversations with them to help address any PPE shortages in the future. Next slide. So just in conclusion, we're pretty excited about what the Ad-Astra Coalition is doing. We think that bringing these aviation manufacturers together has been a big success so far, and will continue to be a success. We are looking for additional funding, obviously, because we think we can help well beyond the Kansas region, and we want to kind of expand and help as far as we can. The aviation manufacturers have extreme capabilities when it comes to manufacturing. Our planes, have been flying very good. So this is just an ability for us to take that same engineering skills and capabilities and apply them to another situation. And with that, I will turn it over to the next speaker.
Great, thank you, Rob. This is Jeff. I made it back into the system here. So Rob and Debbie, thanks very much. And we're going to move next to Utah. This is Talinda Larson, who's the director of the Utah Advanced Materials and Manufacturing Initiative. and I'll let her speak. And just as a reminder to our participants, we're holding questions to the end, and when we get to the end, if you have a question, you can type it up into the chat box, and we'll do our best to get your question. So over to you, Talinda.
Thank you, Jeff. Can everyone hear me okay? Jeff, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Sounds good.
So I will continue. First of all, my apologies since I was the technical person and that's not my core strength. We will next time use a webinar-based system because we had more than 90 people try and sign up for only 75 slots, and we didn't know that at the time, so I apologize. So I'm going to catch up on the time. Utah Advanced Materials Manufacturing Institute. We are a very narrowly defined institute where we look at carbon fiber, advanced alloys, ceramics, and polymers. We are looking at high precision manufacturing using robotics and 3D printing. We have in SBA cluster more than 150 companies statewide with 15,000 workers with an economic impact to the state of more than 600 million. We have university programs with all the leading universities in the state. Our core 3 projects are coal to fiber, which we're working with IACME and the University of Utah. As I mentioned, we have the Small Business Administration Regional Innovation Cluster Program. We're doing 3D fabrication of legacy Air Force aircraft parts, and you'll learn more about our Connect supply tool, providing connection and exchange. So the UAMI, or actually the Utah response to COVID-19, is the governor released very early on a strategic plan for urgent stabilization and recovery and set up the corona.utah.gov as the central resource. We've been having Governor Economic Development Task Force daily calls, weekly calls, town meetings, congressional briefings. So we really have reached out in the state of Utah to the business community to work together to find solutions. And then creatively, the Utah Governor's Office came up with bridge loans. They pulled in various funding programs and were able to come up with 20 millions for quick loans to small businesses to bridge to the SBA loans in the range of 5 to 20,000. We're anticipating helping a total of 4,000 companies. Checks have already started to go out on that program. It's very, very successful. UAMI put up, in addition to the site that the state put up, which is the first one over here, we launched our website, which I think everybody did, and we're pushing out our community, or as we call it, our cluster. We held a webinar on April 1st to help understand supply chain and some creative tools to fixing and finding alternatives to your supply chain.
With Teresa as well? Or?
We also have an outreach program where we're contacting our 150 companies in our cluster, and we're learning some interesting things. Obviously, they're all small companies, but many of them, 53%, are not experiencing reduced customer demand. That's primarily because their DoD contracts are holding firm, or they have pivoted to COVID-19 response. And also, therefore, 56% had no changes in their operations since all of the social distancing. Only 25% have actually reduced production. We also were very surprised to find that the vast majority, 2/3, are finding they are not having shortages in supplies. The supplies they are finding shortages is cleaning supplies, like we in our consumer network are also finding. The other part of that is delayed deliveries and logistics support. By doing this outreach, we found that 25% needed more information, and now we are working one-on-one with those and getting them the information for all small businesses. So Connects is the tool that UAMI has put together to do a supply chain connection and exchange. It's a visualization and risk assessment. You can search by equipment, material, certification, products. It also has workforce and R&D visualization. In addition to all of the matching that goes on, we have an exchange center for surplus materials. And in this exchange center, we are matching up companies that have plastics or other supplies to companies that are doing PPE. We also do a blacklist verification of all the organizations in the supply chain. And we have a direct link to the National Association of Manufacturers marketplace on a single click. This is just a look at what the visualization is. The company gets to see where they're incoming. All those green blocks are showing a visualization of their supply chain, of their suppliers. And then on the other side, it shows their customers. And we also are able to identify supply chain risks, help them search for alternative resources, and identify any that are potentially on a blacklist. The other thing we've done in Utah is our MEP has organized something called the Utah Industrial Resource Alliance, where we're bringing together all of the manufacturers in the state of Utah to kind of work as a cohesive organization to maximize the funding that's coming in from the NIST, from the state, from federal resources, from in academics, and to be able to share resources and ideas and information. Just really looking forward to all the things that we can do through being a comprehensive alliance within the state. And I just want to share a couple of good news stories here in Utah. One of our ski manufacturers, DPS Ski, is working with our governor's office in EDC, Utah. They have a contract to make 20,000 face shields. And Regional Supplies, which is a plastic fabricating services, is providing their plastic sheets for making face shields. And Keomac is experimenting with manufacturing that MIT emergency event ventilator, and they're working with our governor's office. And my last slide, again, since people are friends of and maybe are not on our normal distribution list, if you would like to receive links and presentations, just send me an email. My email is tlarson@uami.org, and I'll be able to send off to you the AMCC links for these presentations and also the link to this video. That's all I have, Jeff, if you want to go up for our last presenter.
Very good, thanks. And our last presenter is Colin. Colin, do you want me to put your slides up? Would that be the best thing?
Sure, Jeff. If you can do that, that would be great.
Okay.
If you can't, I can do it.
Got it right here. Oh, that.
Okay, great.
Hang on one second.
That'll come up shortly.
Okay, here we go. Sorry about that. You are on.
Great, super. Thank you. Yeah, you can hear me?
Yes, sir.
Fabulous. Well, good afternoon, everyone. At least this afternoon in Connecticut. My name is Colin Cooper. I'm the Chief Manufacturing Officer for the state of Connecticut. This is a new position for the state of Connecticut. I had started my career as a design engineer for Pratt & Whitney, which is the world's second largest manufacturer of commercial and military jet engines. And for the past 20 plus years, I served as the CEO and then executive chairman of the Whitcraft Group, which is a Connecticut-based aerospace manufacturer with operations now in 11 states and over 1,800 employees. I retired from the Whitcraft Group in October 30th, and started working for the state October 31st as Connecticut's first chief manufacturing officer. And it's been an exciting 5.5 months since I joined the state. It seems like a lifetime ago, but about a month and a half ago, our top priorities were things like workforce development, regulation reform, access to capital, and the like. And the world has changed dramatically, obviously, in the last 4 to 6 weeks. So if you could go to the next slide, please. just by sort of way of background, like the other states, we've looked for several sources for critical medical equipment and supplies. We early on went to access the national stockpile and really didn't get much in the way of 14% of our initial request was able to be filled there. We also have put together a process for donations, and I'll get into talking about our process for purchasing, and then really focus on our efforts to sort of retool and try to supply these critical medical equipment and supplies through sort of non-traditional manufacture. And to do that, obviously, our governor has waived the registration requirement to produce alcohol-based hand sanitizer and personal protective equipment, which gives us more flexibility to address this. Super. So the type of things we've been talking about with this group that are need include ventilators, N95 respirators, face shields. We've spent some time talking about that. Face masks and surgical and isolation gowns, gloves, thermometers, hand sanitizers. Right now, in our state, one of the big shortages is swabs for tests, and so we've got some initiatives going on there, and I'll get into some more of those shortly. If you go to the next slide, please. So we, in shorter order, we convened a state task force to identify and quantify shortages of critical medical equipment and supplies across the state, and then convened a purchasing team, within our Department of Administrative Services that is generating and following leads to purchase such items from what I would call sort of traditional manufacturers and distribution channels. They've generated and followed up on over 1,200 leads. It seems like everybody knows a guy who knows a guy who knows a gal who knows how to get a hold of things out of China. But I can tell you that traditional supply chains for these items are currently overwhelmed, and even sort of historically reliable sources are less than reliable in this situation. And really, we've got people on the ground in China, and I can tell you that the things are changing by the hour there. So what we did is we comprised a consortium of Connecticut-based groups, working with CBIA, which is the Connecticut Business and Industry Association. It's sort of an umbrella business organization in the state. Constep, which is a MEP here in Connecticut, the Connecticut Hospital Association, and my office, working together, we formed a consortium to work with the manufacturing base to meet those needs that can't be met through traditional sources. Go to the next slide, please. So initially, when this started, I was really fielding a lot of just the inbound requests. We put the APB out on sort of to the manufacturing community, saying, we needed people to help. Like Washington State, we got hundreds of people sort of putting their hands up, and we needed to sort of vet those folks and really figure out who to start focusing with. So, and the folks from CBIA and Constep have been great. When we put this consortium together, we have sort of different manufacturers working with different groups, and then we developed a database, and then we developed a website now that we use to organize the manufacturers, and then also to provide technical information to them, because by definition, we're asking them to make things that they don't historically make, and the more technical information we can get to them and specifications, the better chance we have to getting a timely response and a good outcome. So then once we we start working with them, there's a fairly manual process where we match them up with local healthcare providers near them, because this can be a very iterative process, and some of the prior presentations talked about that. There are various number of prototypes and whatnot, but once we get a product to a point where a healthcare provider is satisfied with it, we then notify the state purchasing team to let them know, so that they can come in behind and also make purchases. The state team, who's following more traditional channels, really isn't in a position to opine on what is satisfactory for the use intended, but the people on the ground and the healthcare organizations can do that. So once we have something that's suitable for them, then we sort of open up the universe of essentially customers for that product by bringing the state in behind them. And now this website, we're now using it as a clearinghouse to match these non-traditional suppliers with customers or consumers of these critically needed medical equipment and supplies. And those folks are, in addition to the hospitals, there are also other organizations such as the local first responders, the nursing homes, the healthcare providers, hospice, and also now workers in essential businesses. We have a new requirement coming out in the state to require the use of face masks in the workplace, and a lot of our essential businesses are looking for sources for things like face masks. If you can go to the next slide, please. We also, I think somebody mentioned that their state had put together a bridge loan program. We have a bridge loan program in Connecticut. We've been sort of overwhelmed by demand on it, and that is open to all businesses in Connecticut, not just manufacturing. But manufacturing specific, we launched a new initiative in our Manufacturing Innovation Fund to give priority grants of up to $75,000 for companies to help them retool their operations or to expand their capacity if they're making critically needed shortage items. Initially, this has been funded with $1.3 million. We just announced this last week. We've gotten 1,400 hits on the website, and already 24 applications have been filed, and we're going through them, approving them, and in the process of dispersing those funds. You can go to the next slide, please. So in the past several weeks, it's amazing how quickly and nimbly companies can react. We've had some great success addressing these issues. We now in the state are producing face shields at the rate of 250,000 a day between about 5 different manufacturers. We have 4 manufacturers producing face masks. And in fact, we're producing so many face shields that they are no longer on our critical shortage list. We're looking for other, essentially markets, other places that need them. Face masks, we've got about 4 manufacturers now that have pivoted into that. Hand sanitizer, I think like Washington State, we've had distilleries move into that, breweries, even chemical companies and cleaning supply companies. And like Washington, one of our constraints has been bottles, but by using the breweries, we're doing some non-traditional packaging. We also are working with dairies to secure supply of 1-gallon jugs, which we then can distribute out to people, and they can refill the smaller pump-sized containers.
Colin, you got one more minute, Colin, okay?
Sure, that's fine. We've got four companies making isolation and surgical gowns now. We've got a company that was in the plastic signboard business that's making hospital beds and has supplied thousands of hospital beds now to field hospitals, not just in Connecticut, but other states. And then, of course, we've got a ventilator manufacturer and a number of companies that are expanding capacity, making ventilator components and taking advantage of the fund grants to do so. So there's a lot going on in the manufacturing community. We're working with our largest university in the state on a number of projects that are very exciting, and it's been great to see how reactive everybody has been to help address these critical needs. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Colin. That was outstanding stuff. So really appreciate it. This brings us close to the end of our time right now. I know that there were some questions that were asked on chat. I think, and Matt Bogosian, you are welcome to jump in on this question. I think we discussed about trying to make the presentations available to everyone that registered and took part in the conference today. I think what we agreed to do was that we would send a message out to everybody that was on the call today, letting them know where the presentations will be. And I think at the same time, we could also make contact information available for every presenter if there are people that have got questions that have got that there. I think we're just not going to be able to get to the questions. Matt, are you okay with that approach?
Yes, that's great, Jeff. And this is a challenge of having a very popular webinar. So it's a good problem, but we'll overcome it that way. It'll be great, and we'll be in contact. We also want your comments on how, obviously, we want to improve the platform and have more folks be able to attend in the future. But any other comments and suggestions if we decide, if AMCC decides to do this again, your thoughts would be well received. So thank you for that.
And I just want to add my thanks to all of the people that took time to be part of this. And as I have experienced in the AMCC experience myself, getting a chance to hear what's going on in different parts of the country in these great little snapshots of things that are there, it's really impressive to see how the manufacturing industry around the country has stepped up in very different ways, given the resources that are in each of these places. So I am exceptionally happy with the contest, and I hope that you are as well. So again, anybody have any closing comments they'd like to make to Linda or any of our presenters? Are we okay?
I think we're good.
All right, great. Again, thank you all for joining. We had over 90 people that were part of this at one point during our event today. We really appreciate your participation, and we look forward to doing more of these. So with that, we'll sign off for today. And again, have a happy and safe and well day wherever you are. Thanks.